Yes, it's on. Thank you, everyone, and good afternoon. And I'm happy to be here to tell you a bit about good practices for strong boards of the SOE guidelines. And the strong boards selected OECD as SOE guidelines recommendations. I'm really focusing on two areas. The one is state's role as an owner and a couple of recommendations on that front. And then on the point 6, the composition and responsibilities of SOE boards. And on these two items, I have concentrated on 3 sub-items. And then there is the merit-based and transparent board nomination, remuneration, and finally the appointing the board members with applicable qualifications as well. And first I would like to take you to the recommendation where we should look the establishing and safeguarding well-structured merit-based and transparent board nomination process. And here I would like to especially highlight that the structured nomination and appointment process is highly recommended. Usually it is facilitated by the ownership entity, and this process is based on board profiles, which are also usually defined together with the board or solely at the ownership entity. Then secondly, the selection of the board members. There I would like to highlight the fact that proper evaluation is proposed and suggested. And then the merit-based nomination. So all the board members should have merit-based nomination and appraisal made. And this, of course, is that the use of professional staffing agencies helps in the evaluation of the merit-based nominations. And these staffing agencies, which usually the government or the SOE unit or the ownership steering are employing, should be then sort of having a competition every 2 or 3 or 4 years in order to have the latest and the most proficient service provider for you. Then if one moves on to the composition and responsibilities of the SOE boards, then the boards should be selected on core competencies and possessive knowledge. And there the merit-based is the key. Of course, it needs that the board members need to have personal integrity and professional qualifications as well. And then the knowledge and acquired experience is key, especially if the acquired experience is in the line of the business of the company as well. Then one looks to diversity in the companies. So the diversity is more than just the gender, it's age, it's geographical background, it's professional background and educational background as well. And there the board members may need to acquire additional skills, and therefore it's important the board is able to educate itself as well. So there is a board process that they would able to increase their knowledge as well. And if you would have a board member who has combination of more than one sectoral experience, of course that would be great, so that he or she has wider experience in the board to be served. Then one comes to the remuneration policy, and the recommendation is that it's clear and transparent and overreaching, the recommendation policy. And it is key to notice that the recommendation for the objectives operating in a competitive environment is affecting the remuneration levels as well. So the remuneration levels should align to long-term interests of the SOEs and reflect market conditions. So if the company is on a very strong growth mode, and the company is growing and the size of the company is increasing, hopefully this is then taking into consideration the market consideration and the board remuneration is moving accordingly. Also vice versa, if the company's businesses are sold, the company is decreasing in size, the importance of the company's operation is less than previously, also the board fees can be flexible to downwards as well. So it's important to look the whole situation. And of course, the good practices calls for performance-based remuneration for components for the management, but not as much to the board. So it is important to notice that the management has the performance-related instruments and performance-related pay and performance-related KPIs in their remuneration, but boards mainly are on fixed basis, because if the boards would have the same flexible and performance-based remuneration, then there would be a conflict of interest. If the board is setting the targets which are the same for the management and for themselves, then the remuneration is most likely to have a conflict of interest. So this is briefly summarizing the OECD recommendations on the board selection and the board remuneration as well. Now I briefly move on to Finland, as being previously in the ownership steering department in Finland, and I just highlight you some case examples of the board selection and remuneration in Finland. And this is setting the scene. So this is the structure, how the ownership steering is structured in Finland. We have ownership steering department in Prime Minister's office. Half of the 70 companies is in there, and the other half is in line ministries. The ownership steering is setting the coordinating role, and it also is setting the general principles of hiring board members, and a lot of the principles are also derived from the ownership steering policy paper. Then the Solidium, which is state holding company for minority listed holdings, they do have their own process selecting board members to these listed companies. In Finland, all the listed companies have nomination committees, and in these nomination committees are represented the 3 largest shareholders. And because Solidium has a minority shareholder, which is significant, they have their representatives in the nomination committees. And in Prime Minister's office, we have 4 listed companies, and the state holding is significant. So therefore, civil servants are representing the state in the nomination committee as well. And in other companies where we do have other shareholders, we do have nomination committees also. So the principles are there that first of all, the ownership strategy and the company strategy are in line, and therefore this is giving the basis of selecting the board members. And the board members are selected on the basis very much in line with the OECD recommendations. So there is experience, expertise, strategic situation requirements, and corporate to provide diverse expertise as well. So the board is supposed to be very diverse and bringing different competencies for the selection process and also when working together. And our aim is to have a sufficient gender balance, so minimum 40%. We also look at the situation that if the board needs to be redefined due to the change of the company strategy, the board tenure, which is recommended to be 5 to 7 years, can be shorter. So if we need to change board members because the strategy has changed, the board tenure can be 3 years. So it is flexible. It's not fixed 5 to 7 years process. And when one looks the cycle how the board nominations are done in Finland, we start the review of board composition in May, June. Then we move in August, September doing the profiles and assessment in October, November. November, December, we do the candidate interviews, 2 or 3 candidates interviewed. January, February, we provide the minister with our selected candidate to be nominated to the board, and then the nominations will take in April, May, or in the shareholders meeting. Then one comes to the board remuneration in Finland. So it's important that it's transparent. All this information is publicly available in the annual reports of the companies. And then the compensation for board service is taking into consideration the market situation and requirements imposed by the global aspects of the board members. And this is important if one wants to attract international board members, because the remuneration levels are higher in order to get international board members. And also we have noticed that in some of the state-owned enterprises, the remuneration has not moved a bit, or euro or cent, in like 10 years or so. So therefore we need to have in place a long-term plan how to increase gradually the remuneration of the board members in the competitive levels as well. One exception here is that in the listed company, the state has the policy that where the state has direct holding, the 40% of the fixed fee is paid in shares and 60% is paid in cash. And basically that 60% is then for taxes. So eventually if you are a board member in a listed company, you get the shares and you are expected to hold them as well, as long as you are the board member as well, because you every year get more and more shares. So this is just to make sure that your interest is aligned with the shareholders and you have the common goal to increase the shareholder value. Then just one case example of the state railways, how the board remuneration is there. So it is the fixed annual fee paid in monthly installments, and then there is a 600 euros committee or board meeting fee in addition to that. So this is the sort of level, and we don't want to see in Finland any case where the board fee would depend on the CEO salary or any other management salaries, because this is potentially creating a cycle where the board is increasing the CEO salary, which actually is relating to the fact that you are increasing the board fees as well. So therefore we always say it's fixed and it should be market-based rather than dependent on any other issues. So I would like to finish here. And then just briefly show you that this is a competence mapping tool what can be used, and this is just to sort of individually aligned or planned or how you want to play it in your countries or in your companies. And a lot of the consultants use the similar type of tools in order to make the assessment of the board competencies and how the board would work as a whole. So I pause here and wish you a very good panel discussion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Kimmo. And actually, what I was thinking is that be careful what you wish for. Because there was one question regarding, so what country examples we need to learn regarding corporate governance, and you shared also the Finnish storing experience. And as far as I know, also currently the State Chancellery project are learning from Finnish experience and how to improve legislation and practices here. And one point what I particularly want to take from your presentation is that if more and more there will be non-state shareholders or companies will be listed, you will have to adjust governance framework to respect all shareholders and adjust the regulation that state cannot decide 100% everything, but you need to have adjusted format. So thank you very much for the insights regarding the boards and also diving into Finnish experience.